Direct Line, Montgomery County Republican Club's show every Wednesday night. We are joined by Councilwoman Jessica Haire of Anne Arundel County today, and your hosts tonight are Mark Unkefer and Jackie Saxon. Take it away, guys.
Thank you, Dwight. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Good, thanks. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so obviously you're running for county executive, and we wanted to have you on so that all of the voters out there can be informed going into the primary and eventually as well into, we're hoping, the general as well. So we wanted to start off just by letting everyone get a chance to know you and a little bit of background about who you are, how you got involved in politics, how you came to want to run for county executive, and then we can move on into some of the more nitty-gritty political stuff.
Sure. Okay, so I live with my husband and our 4 children in Edgewater, Maryland, in Anne Arundel County, and we love it here. In terms of how I got into politics, actually, I get this question a lot, sort of where did it all start? And it actually probably started when I was about 6. And I learned my first lesson then, like most little kids, from my mom. My mom was really... She's a great lady. She grew up in a tenement house and got a scholarship to college and then put herself through medical school by joining the military. So I was born on an Air Force base. And when I was very little, she actually worked multiple jobs to make ends meet and give her kids an easier life. And so actually on Wednesday evenings, she would pick me up from kindergarten and my younger sister up from preschool. And we would go with her to the night clinic where she worked very, very late, seeing patients for extra money. We didn't have childcare because it was expensive. And she would bring a box of crayons and sleeping bags and take us into one of the exam rooms in the clinic. And that crinkly paper that's on top of the exam table, right? So we could sit there and color for as long as we wanted, as long as we were quiet and we didn't fight. And then when we would get tired, we could lay down in the sleeping bags and go to sleep. And she would pack us up at the end of the night, take us home. And somehow she did that week in and week out without fail. Years later, she was able to open her own medical practice. And so I didn't realize it at the time, but that for me was a lesson in hard work, right? The concept that hard work leads to limitless opportunities. And it's something that has always stayed with me in my mind. It's something I try and teach to my kids now. And it's something I think is missing really from our government today. So from there, high school, middle school, high school, et cetera, I went and studied civil engineering for college. And that was definitely my second lesson in politics, which is interesting because most people think about civil engineering, it has nothing to do with politics, right? Except that what touches every community, right? It's your infrastructure. So it's your roads, it's your schools, it's your school capacity, it's the electrical, it is stormwater and sanitary sewer and flooding. All of that is engineering and infrastructure. And engineering is about problem solving. So you take an issue and a set of constraints and you work at it until you find a common sense, innovative, efficient solution. And so that for me was the second piece. And that's how I approach everything. I take that common sense, innovative, efficient solution. And that's how I've approached the council. It's how I'll approach the county executive seats. And I guess maybe that's how I got started in politics. Shortly thereafter, I ended up volunteering for the state party, and here I am.
But it's interesting, you started as an engineer and became a lawyer. So why the change?
Yes. So I did a number of years working for a local engineering firm here, doing design work. So sanitary sewer, stormwater, erosion and sediment control, which I know is a big issue in the county now, having that erosion control and flood prevention. I did a lot of that. I did some airport and taxiway design. I actually got to design this really huge culvert at an airport once, which was so fun. If I'm going to be a little bit of a nerd for a second, it was about 20 feet wide by 18 feet tall, precast wings on the concrete. And, but it went from outside the secure perimeter to inside the secure perimeter. And of course, that's a security issue, right? So we have to make sure that this huge culvert is not somehow used for folks to inappropriately access the secure areas of the airport. So we had to put some kind of something on it to allow water and small animals to go through, but not people. And so I ended up with this galvanized steel grate that is very difficult to attach to concrete. We had to make some cutouts and insert some I-beams. It was very cool. But shortly thereafter, I ended up being assigned to a project that was very cold. I was in Freiburg, Maine, thigh high in snow. And around the same time, my parents were getting a divorce. And so my mom and I actually took the LSATs together, which was really fun. And I thought, this is something I want to pursue. So from there, I made the switch. I put myself through law school. And now I work with our nation's contractors who build infrastructure overseas and here. So, large bridges or military barracks or embassies and things like that overseas.
So hard work is definitely not something that's foreign concept to you, which I think is important. People to elect somebody who's going to put the hours in, and certainly your background in infrastructure. I think it's the one thing that the Biden administration is claiming that they've done well is this infrastructure bill, though if you really nitpick into it, we're not going to go into that now. But, people care regardless of what side of the aisle they're on is on infrastructure. So can you talk a little bit about what kind of infrastructure changes? I know you talked about erosion control. What other kinds of infrastructure changes as county executive you'd like to oversee?
There's a couple of things actually. When I was first running for county council, there are some roadways in the county that really don't have safe access. The one that immediately comes to mind is down the Mayo Peninsula in District 7, Route 214. It's one lane in and one lane out. And we see this in a lot of peninsulas. The issue becomes when you have a downed power line or a tree that falls, or there's a fire and the fire trucks have to come in and the whole road gets blocked off and the whole peninsula, you can't get on or off. And so that can leave people stranded one way or the other. What happens if somebody has a medical emergency at the end of the peninsula? And it's not just the Mayo Peninsula, but that one came up for sure during the 2018 campaign. And I worked tirelessly with DPW. Actually, I think folks on both sides of the aisle agree that this is a big issue here. And so we've really pushed hard to promote getting this design ready, reprogramming some dollars to make sure that the road can be widened in the most areas where you see the logjam now, and make sure that that's a safety piece for everyone. Along those lines, we are missing out on a lot of off-road bike paths and walking trails throughout the county. There are parts of the county where there are some beautiful trails, but there are also parts that have nothing. And so the walkability aspect of many areas of the county is a real struggle. And we've seen this impact residents a lot through 2020, right? With all of the COVID restrictions, people want to be outside, they want to be walking, they want to have that opportunity. But we've also seen this with some of the bus driver shortages. If we had more sidewalks near schools, we would be able to have more walkers to the schools and need fewer bus routes, right? Maybe we could condense some of those. We've also seen our schools in the county that don't have proper air ventilation. We really need to make sure, obviously, that our students are learning in an atmosphere and breathe appropriately, and the air is, cool in the summer and warm in the winter. So those are kind of very basic things, but they're important. There was a project in Riva Road this year that was meant a lot to a number of residents, and it ended up being striped improperly. And so I was able to work with the constituent, talk to DPW, make sure it got restriped properly. And so these are kind of just basic things. I've seen them my whole career. And so it's easy to spot and easy to try and help negotiate the fix.
Awesome.
You referenced COVID and certainly masks and mask mandates, and the county council in Anne Arundel County has been very much in the news. Where do things stand now? And maybe you can provide a little context to the how shall I say, drama that's been associated with that.
Drama is a good word for it. So let me go back a little bit. On December 30, I believe it was, the county executive announced that he would implement a 7-day state of emergency starting on December 31st, on New Year's Eve, which is unfortunate timing. And that as part of that 7-day emergency, he was going to impose a mask mandate countywide. Now, the county charter allows the county executive to impose a 7-day emergency, but to expand an emergency beyond 7 days, he has to have the approval of the council. And the approval of the council requires a supermajority of votes, which is 5 votes on the council. So the council scheduled an emergency hearing to hear and vote on 2 pieces of legislation. The first piece was actually a totally separate bill that was brought by Councilwoman Rodvian, I believe, out of District 6, which would have allowed a mask mandate to stay in place for, I believe it was 45 days. And that also, as an emergency piece of legislation, required a supermajority of votes. The second bill that was on the table that day was the county executive's bill to extend the emergency authority. Again, both of those required 5 votes. We had a marathon session that day. I think it was about 6.5 hours of the emergency session. And everybody listened intently and asked questions. You know, personally for myself, I was really concerned about where's the off-ramp for this? We're constantly kind of goalposts are shifting. Last year we heard it was vaccinations of between 60 and 80%. Now we're hearing maybe over 90%. Every time there's a new variant, where are we, what's the end game here and how are we going to deal with this kind of lifelong? And I don't ever feel like I really got a good answer to that because the health department just said, well, we don't really know. It might change forever and we might be doing this forever. So in any event, there were not 5 votes on the council to pass those 2 pieces of legislation. So both of those legislations failed. And then remarkably, maybe 2 hours after the legislation failed, the health officer unilaterally imposed a mask mandate through the rest of January regardless. That has been challenged. There is a declaratory judgment action that is pending in the courts. And the mask mandate he did let it expire on January 31. So currently countywide, there is not a mask mandate. The county executive separately has an executive order to require masks in county buildings. So you are still required in county buildings to wear a mask. But I will note what's interesting is the health department posted the day before, I believe, that the mask mandate was going to end, this graphic on its Facebook page about, okay, the mandate's ending. But in that graphic, there's a line that shows the efficacy of different masks. And for cloth masks, it says it's 0% effective against the virus. So the health officer put in this mandate, and then when it ended, said, yeah, they weren't effective. At the same time, patting himself on the back for reducing the hospitalizations. It was really kind of unusual. The county executive shared the post. I was really very surprised by it.
So are you saying that my Maryland Republican Party cloth mask is not any good?
I'm saying the health department posted a graphic that says just that.
Mark, it's 100% effective at scaring off liberals. I can attest to this. I wear it everywhere.
Sorry.
Or starting fights, depending on what you're going for.
There you go.
So you're a mother of 4, and obviously with the masks and everything, one of the biggest things that's on a lot of people's minds, especially after watching what went on in Virginia, is schools. I know in Montgomery County, we are seeing parents who are aghast because they're making kids eat outside. It's like 10 degrees out and they have to wear masks. I think there was one parent who taped a mask to a kid's face, or not a parent, a teacher.
I did see that.
Yeah. So what's going on in schools by you, and how are your kids responding to it? And how are you responding as a parent?
So I struggle with this. I think especially for young kids where, they learn so much by mimicking, right? They look at other people's facial expressions. They mimic, when they're learning to read, they look at how you form words with your mouth. I think it has been a real struggle for kids in school. I also can see the adverse impacts that we're seeing to mental health of students. If we look at, the number of suicides overall in the county last year. I mean, we see a lot of these metrics, the opioid overdoses, the average age of opioid overdoses. There's all sorts of these kind of numbers that really kind of terrify me, particularly when it comes to our kids. And I'm not sure that we'll see the full impact for kids for quite some time. There are, I know that the state has put in guideposts for allowing schools to remove the masks. I believe the State Department of Education, I think it was 80% vaccination was the rate. Don't quote me on that. Somebody could double check that, but I think that was the number that they used to allow schools to have this off ramp. So, look, I'm hopeful that this will be an option. Parents who feel more comfortable with their children wearing a mask could certainly continue it. And parents who feel more comfortable with their children not wearing a mask would have that option at the schools. And I think we will see more of that. My hope is anyways, as the spring moves forward.
So turning to other issues, as you're running for county executive in Anne Arundel County, obviously you're taking on an incumbent, Stuart Pittman, and he's been a controversial figure. Some of the issues that have been top of mind of both his spending and his tax increases. So let's talk about the tax increases that he's proposed and gotten, been pushing for since he became county executive.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anybody remember his commercial from 2018? Right? He had a boot. He sat there in front of the camera and he duct taped his boot to show the county how frugal he was, because he's a farmer and he's frugal and he's going to do this. In his inaugural address, he stood at Maryland Hall and said, "We must do more with less." That was his tagline. And then that very first year, he increased everybody's taxes. Property taxes went up. He went around the property tax cap, the voter imposed property tax cap. He went around it. He increased income taxes. He's put new fees on things. The trash fee went up. I mean, everything has just increased. The total amount of the budget, it's something close to $300 million more now than it was in the last year that Steve Shue was county executive. And it's, it's just, can anyone say that they're better off now than they were 4 years ago with all of that increased spending? Does anyone feel like they have that much more in government services, government responsiveness, government responsibility? I hear from folks all the time. They don't feel like they have a say in their children's education. They don't feel safe in their communities. They're watching the cost of everything climb. And, they're watching a county executive spend more and more and more without real justification to do it. Even after we go back to COVID, even after private businesses were open, things were open up, county government buildings were still closed. And so you're spending all this extra money and the government's taking all these extra taxes and you can't walk into a county building. They've since opened. I actually passed a resolution at the council urging the county executive to reopen the buildings. It was last June of 2020. June of 2021. And that did happen. I think he opened them about 30, 40 days later. But, this is what folks are seeing. And it's really hard for them to watch their hard-earned money go up in smoke between taxes and inflation.
Absolutely. And, the issue of taxes is something we're seeing not just at the county level, but we're seeing our state legislature take that on as well, right? And I know you've been following that a little bit.
Yeah. And and the county executive actually has been at the state legislature a number of times to request permission to add even more taxes to his toolbox, taxes he's not currently allowed to do. What's remarkable about all of this is with all of this extra revenue and all of these extra taxes, we still have a structural deficit. The last 2 years in a row, he's had a structural deficit. So $25 million 2 years ago, $20 million last year. So we're using, one-time money from CARES Act funding or, the ARPA funding and things like that to fund recurring expenses. That is a recipe for disaster, right? Because what happens when that money's not there? Either you just blow through the rainy day fund or you increase taxes again. So this is not a sustainable path that we're on with the current county executive spending.
And it's worth noting that other jurisdictions have been more careful with that CARES Act money, trying to make it stretch out and also recognizing that it, as you say, wasn't going to be around forever. It wasn't a recurring revenue source. And so it really stores up, I guess, some tough decisions for whoever is county executive after 2022.
Yes, but I am not afraid of a challenge. We will fix it. We will cut out that wasteful spending. We will stop those tax increases. We will get our budget to be balanced properly without using some of these, off balance tools that he's doing, off balance sheet tools to try and make everything look fine. He's outspent the spending. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and it's an interesting contrast with the state, which is in much stronger financial shape, where the governor has been, again, held the rate of spending increase in check. So you basically, now obviously Anne Arundel is a subset of Maryland, but you've got the same economies driving the same revenue increases, but different results because of different kinds of executives in office.
Right. It's the leadership, right? It comes down to the leadership. At this point, look at this, the state, there's bills in right now to eliminate the retirement taxes for folks, which I think is a great idea. If we've got a surplus, let's use some of that. Let's make the state more affordable for retirees, especially as our population enters that. We want to keep those folks here. They spent their life here, right? They raised their children here. They paid taxes here all these years. Let's cut them a break. But it's something that this current county executive, he's just interested in how much more he can get, which is unfortunate.
So let's shift topics a little bit. Obviously, this is something that we're seeing at the national level. And even today, I think we saw the entire fire department was off so that they can attend a funeral in Baltimore for the 3 firefighters who passed away. Can you talk a little bit about what crime is like in Anne Arundel County? Is it rising the way that we're seeing in other big cities?
That's an interesting question. I can tell you when folks talk to me, they don't feel safer. I have been trying to get some of the statistics because the current county executive he says that crime is actually down. He doesn't share where that number comes from. He doesn't share what years he's comparing. He says violent crime is down, but he doesn't give any of the backup. Some of that information is not easily found, and I think it should be transparent and available to anyone who wants to look at it. So, I think that's one thing we really need to make crystal clear to folks is where you can find this information. Just basic statistics. How many, look at from year to year. What is crime doing in the county? I also think it would help us understand a little bit about what we can do to help it. And if communities are not feeling as safe, why, right? Let's explore why that is. But here in the newspaper, I can think of 3, really violent issues just in the last few months in District 7 alone that were in front of the newspaper. So it definitely doesn't feel that way. And it's something that's on the front of everyone's mind.
It's interesting because having really good data and for crime statistics and also with location information has been one of the really effective strategies for fighting crime. And it's was certainly something that in New York was really one of the drivers to drive down the murder rate, was having that kind of information available, that crime stat information. That having a government that doesn't share that is really kind of disconcerting. It makes it harder for them to make people safer.
Yeah, and I'm sure the data exists, right? I'm sure that our police department is doing a wonderful job looking at all this data and evaluating it and making those ties and things like that. But making sure that it is readily available to the public and that folks know where to go to find it is that's the second piece of this. And I think that's the part that's missing. It's that transparency aspect of it that we really need to work on a little bit more. I also think that helps, just improve relations with the community and relations with the police in general, is having that kind of transparency with that.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit more about some of the issues that you feel like are really important to Anne Arundel County voters? I'm sure there's your bread and butter issues. I know we touched on taxes, we touched on crime, we touched on schools. What else do you think is, you have the unique position of being in the state capital. Like, does that make a difference? Are there things that people care more about just because of where you're located?
It's interesting. We do face some unique challenges by virtue of the fact, look, Anne Arundel County has 500 miles plus of shoreline. So that brings with it some interesting challenges with respect to storm surges and, down power lines and things like that I mentioned, or flooding that might prevent the peninsula folks from being able to get on or off the peninsula. So we have those infrastructure challenges that may not be present in other jurisdictions. It's one of the reasons why I do think my background is well suited for this position. And I've spent my time on the council focusing on lowering the tax burden for hardworking families and promoting this quality infrastructure. The third piece, I guess I would say, is really this concept of kind of government overreach or overregulation. I've had a number of bills that have been aimed at incentivizing homeowners or really removing these layers of extra regulation. So I can give you a couple of examples of each. On the money side, so I was the lead sponsor on a successful bill to offer a property tax credit to service disabled veterans in the county. And I was very happy I was able to secure unanimous support on that from the council. And I think this is something that's important, right? These are the folks who fought for our country. So we absolutely should make sure we do everything we can to help them live here. And of course, with Fort Meade being here, there are a number of veterans, right? On the infrastructure side, I've done a lot of work with making sure that we are helping folks reconfigure. The latest bill I had, it helped to reconfigure pavement and move it away from the bay in marinas, so that we're helping the businesses upgrade their services, but also make it more environmentally friendly by moving it away from the shoreline. So that was kind of a really cool dual purpose here, where you can be both business friendly and environmentally friendly. And it was supported by the business community as well as the environmental folks. So that was really exciting. On the regulatory side, so there's a whole host of things here I could give as examples, but District 7 has a huge farming community, right? And so one of the things I had heard from constituents was that folks want to be able to sell direct to consumers. And I think consumers want to buy direct from farmers, right? We hear about this all the time. You want to be able to go and direct buy tomatoes, apples, whatever it might be. But the process to do it is so arduous. And you have to go through this entire plan. It's expensive just to put up, a roadside produce stand. So I went in, I talked to the farmers, and I said, we have to fix this. And we did. We removed the requirement to have a site development plan for farmers who are trying to sell their stuff direct to consumers. And same thing, we were able to go in, we were able to get support from planning and zoning. I was able to get a unanimous vote and really kind of remove that. So I've passed about 20 pieces of legislation in my 3 years. I think that's more than any other council member. And all of it has been reducing taxes and burdens, reducing unnecessary regulations, and making sure we have quality infrastructure.
And it sounds like a good percentage of what you were passing as well had bipartisan support.
So actually, it all does, because
Right.
the council is Democrat majority. So for me to pass even one bill, everything has to have bipartisan support to get passed. So yes, I've had to work hard to get all of it passed, and most of it has been not just a 4-3 vote, but 6-1, 7-0 type of votes. I'm proud of that.
That raises obviously a key issue, which is that in addition to the county executive's position, the county council is up for grabs, and there is the prospect of a shift in control. You want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think if you look at the last election nationwide, I think the Republican message of limited government, personal freedom is resonating with voters. And I think as I move around the county right now, I think that message is resonating with voters. And I think there is a really strong momentum here for the folks who are running for council to flip a seat and go to at least a 4-3 majority Republican and take the county executive seat. And I think if we do that, we can make a lot of great progress in the county.
Now, in Maryland, we obviously have a divided responsibility between the school boards in the county and the the role of the county government. County government, of course, sets the budget, although that's subject to various requirements from the state level. What can you say about what, as county executive, you can do on to affect the Anne Arundel Public Schools?
So a lot of it, I think, is just being the leader who's not reactive, which is my impression of what is currently going on, but rather being a proactive leader. I think there's a lot of areas you can partner with the school system in advance. We talked about the bus driver shortage and things, adding sidewalks takes a long time. That's not an immediate fix, but there are routes that could be condensed. There are routes that don't need a bus, but maybe could use a van. And that means you don't need to have a CDL license to drive the van. And so maybe that makes the application process shorter. When we first heard about this shortage before school started, I think there were some proactive things that could have taken place. If you have to set up rolling outages, I think the county executive can be a real partner with the school superintendent in those areas and offer support. If there are county vans that might be able to be shared between, the county and the school system as necessary. Those are the types of things. The budget obviously is a big one because the county council and the county executive obviously have that control over the budget. But I really think just being a partner and proactive in addressing some of these issues on the front end would go a long way.
And of course, classrooms is an area, the construction of school construction is an area where you guys can get involved as outside the school system as well.
Yes, because that comes through the capital budget. So all of the school projects come through the capital budget. There was a study done in 2015, MGT study, that set out kind of where the next schools should be built. And so by and large, the council, we've made a couple of shifts, but by and large, the council has been moving through that list to try and make those upgrades as possible.
So go ahead.
No, go.
I was going to say, just following up on that, of course, growth and growth policies and development policies have been are always controversial at the county level. Do you see the infrastructure being able to catch up with demand, or will demand for housing sort of drive the increase in infrastructure? How do you see that equation working out?
So either way, you need more infrastructure, right? Either way, whether it's behind or up front, we have to have it. One thing I will note on this, we just had this vote on the school utilization chart at the county council. And this is a little bit convoluted to explain, but the way the school utilization chart is currently done, we have to get certified data from the school system, and then planning and zoning puts together this chart and it comes before the county council and we have to vote on it. Unfortunately, just due to the timing of everything, the county council ends up looking at data that's almost 18 months old by the time it's in front of us. And so we are certifying school utilization rates and the number of students in a school on data we know is not right, because we can look at a school and say, I can see it's overcrowded today, but if I'm using the data from 18 months ago, it says it's not overcrowded. I think this is a huge problem in the process, and it's something we need to fix. I and many other council members have asked the Adequate Public Facilities Work Group to address this issue. They are working on it, although the head of planning and zoning has said it's going to be quite some time before we see any potential solutions to it. But I really think that is one of the biggest pieces. We have to solve that problem because just the other day, the chart we were looking at contained certified data from September of 2020. And we know that in September of 2020, we had 3,000 fewer students because of all of the parents who pulled their children out of the public schools during COVID and instead homeschooled or sent to private school or had some other arrangement. And so we're looking at data with thousands of students too few and trying to predict what's going to happen 3 years from now based on that. It's not working.
Yeah. So in terms of, since we're coming up towards the last fewish minutes of the show, in terms of what you have coming up event-wise, ways that people can support you, what do you have going on that people can keep an eye out for?
Oh gosh, if I'm allowed to plug my website, www.jessicahaire.com. You can sign up.
If you don't, we will.
Oh, absolutely. You can sign up to volunteer with my campaign. We always need folks who are willing to, call friends or march in parades with us or stand at the polls and hand out literature. We would love to have you as part of our team. You can send an email there if you'd like to have a yard sign. There are places to contribute there. We will do a big event in the spring. Stay tuned for more details on that. It will be up on the website shortly.
All right. And again, we did want to take this opportunity to tell people, if you have questions for Jessica, let us know in the chat. We'll post them on the screen so that Jessica can answer them. So have you been making any attempts at the moment? I know it's still in the primary, but attempts to start to talk to Democrat voters or unaffiliated voters? Or are you really just trying to focus on your base at the moment?
You know what? I will talk to anybody who has a question. I represent District 7, so whether you're a Republican, you don't vote at all, you're a constituent in District 7 and you have an issue, please, I want to help try and solve it, right? I want to be part of that solution. But honestly, I don't necessarily local government is not, it's not about all this yelling and all this screaming and all of this division. It is about getting things done. It's about making sure our kids can get to school. It's about making sure, we have adequate safety in place for roads and police and fire and public safety. And it's about making sure that every day, somebody notices a pothole, we can help get it fixed. This is what I've spent my career dedicated to, but absolutely, I'll talk to anyone and everyone who's got an issue.
Sounds good to me. So how do they get in touch with you as a council member?
So if you have an official county question, and I can't discuss any kind of politics or campaigning stuff on my official county email, but my county email is jessica.haire@aacounty.org.
Now, years ago, I used to, not years ago, he's still very active in doing other things right now, but Howie Dennis was the Republican councilman in Montgomery County. And he was famous for his constituent service. And he would tell me the stories of how he would do that. He would get calls from, a dead raccoon in the road or something like that. I'm hoping then he would go out and pick it up, which is frankly bizarre to me. But knowing where he lives around the corner from here in a rather tall building. I'm hoping you draw the line there in terms of your constituent service.
I have not had anyone call me to pick up a dead raccoon. That has not happened yet. But look,
maybe people in Anne Arundel County are just more resourceful than Montgomery County, Bethesda, Maryland, where
the raccoons
we naturally assume that might be a job for government. I don't know.
But no, look, I get calls about litter. I get calls when somebody's trash doesn't get picked up by accident, it gets missed. I get calls if there's a snow plowing issue. I get calls, hey, I've asked for this pothole to be filled 14 times on the app and nobody's coming out. Can you help me? I get calls for, hey, I'm trying to book a pavilion at this park and I need help on the website. So, we get it all. We take it all. We do our best to answer every single one. I do have young kids, so sometimes you'll see me answering emails very late at night after they've gone to bed and I'm still up answering emails.
I have to say the most unbelievable thing about that story Mark just told is that we had a Republican council member at some point.
Well, Howie is still as active as, I think, chairman of the Washington Suburban Sanitation Commission, and has stayed active over a very long period of time. He was also, Jackie, for many years, the state senator from District 16, which is...
See, I get the occasional history lesson on this.
Yeah, show. I'm sorry. We have to break into that. Yes.
Yeah. So let's see. Is there anything else you want to share with us about your campaign, about other campaigns going on in the county or across the state?
The one thing I guess I would say is, look, if anybody's got a question that hasn't been answered yet, don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to chat. I've been moving my way across, up and down and across the county just to meet various folks. So if there are people too, if you've got a community where, you've got 10 people who would like to sit down and have a conversation, I'll go anywhere with a cup of coffee, right? So absolutely sign me up.
So
Yeah.
as you've campaigned, what's been the most effective way to meet people? I kind of asked that since you've been out campaigning and we've been in this COVID where I assume that people are a little bit more reluctant to open doors for door knocking. How has campaigning changed in this environment?
I actually don't know that it's changed all that much. I still find the most effective way to go meet people is face to face. And so I have been having, I had a meet and greet yesterday with 12 folks in the northern part of the county. Sometimes, occasionally, you'll get a group of people who would prefer to do a virtual meet and greet, which is fun. I'm happy to do that too. But mostly, honestly, folks are happy to do it. And, living all around it hasn't been a problem. People are really excited, I think, about this year. You can feel it in the air. And so I think really people are just excited about getting to know the folks who are, hoping to represent them.
And so you fall under the category still of a young Republican, you're under 40. So what would be but you've already been elected to the county council. Your political career has been going on for a couple of years already. So what would be your advice to young people who are looking to get involved in politics or run for office?
Oh my gosh, just start. It always seems like a daunting task when you first look at it. When I started to run for the 2018 race, even though I had been on a volunteer basis behind the scenes for a number of years, it felt a little overwhelming going, well, this is a new area. It's not something I've ventured into before. One step in front of the other, right? Just take a piece at a time and just start. And reach out if you got questions.
That's a great suggestion. For a moment, I thought Jackie, who also heads up our Montgomery County YR chapter, she was going to hit you up for YR membership.
That's going to happen once we're not live anymore.
Do I not have a membership?
For poaching their members.
Yes, I know. Anne Arundel, I'm sure there's a policy on that, right?
I don't know. I'm not above it. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Is there any more like fun stories or funny stories being on the council? I know Mark mentioned raccoons. Are there any other really bizarre requests that you've gotten?
Oh my gosh, bizarre requests. Let me think about this.
See, that's a very dangerous thing because the person who made that bizarre request just might be listening.
It's very true. We'll bring them on to defend themselves.
No, I don't. Mostly, I don't know. I'm trying to think of it. Nothing is truly bizarre. Most people are great, right? People invite you to take walks in their community so you can see what they're dealing with on a daily basis. Everybody, it's really heartwarming to see how much folks care about their community. And like I said, it's not divisive and it's not screaming and yelling the way it is, kind of nationally. It is, I care about the place I live in. And that is really tremendous.
So all the sane people live in Anne Arundel County, Mark. That's why they put us here. That's why we're delegated to MoCo. All right. So, people can find you at jessicahaire.com, right? And they can sign up, they can volunteer, they can donate. And
you can request a yard sign.
Yes, yard signs were great. We love yard signs. And they can stay tuned to see your upcoming campaign event in April or in the spring. And I am obligated to tell people who are watching us on YouTube right now to quote unquote smash that like button, smash that subscribe button, share this with your friends, share this with anybody who's voting in Anne Arundel County so that they can get to know Jessica. Let's see, Mark. Oh, we should plug if you are in Montgomery County or if you live near Montgomery County and like pizza and you like Kelly Schultz, you can join the Montgomery County Republican Club tomorrow night at Mama Lucia's for our first Thursday event. And Kelly Schultz, candidate for governor, will be speaking. She will be in attendance. Pizza will also be in attendance. So it's a great way to spend a Thursday night. We'll be there at 6:30 p.m. and come out and join us. It's going to be a great time and probably one of our bigger turnouts that we've had in a while.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jessica. We really appreciate having you on tonight.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.